I had the wildest situation happen to me late last week, and it left me with so many questions afterwards because it's a situation that has happened on multiple times with this specific person. And it's one that I find gets under my skin every single time. So, to drop you into the scene, I'm going to the gym and I know I'm getting there. I'm like, I'm pressed for time. I've got errands to run. I got things to do. So I need to be really focused and like stay on point the whole time. So I get on the leg press machine. The weights are loaded up. My music is blasting. It's some good stuff playing. I feel really dropped into focus. Like I am moving really well through my workout. I get the leg press all squared up, I get a rep in, I get another rep in, and all of a sudden I feel this giant shadow loom over top of me. I felt this energy just rush up to me, and I was like, "What was that?" I take my headphone off, I look up, and it's one of the trainers at my gym. And as I said, we've dealt with this situation before. This time I have more discernment, more awareness, and more understanding of what's going on. So I turn up and I take my headphone off. And he starts drilling into me, telling me that everything I'm doing is wrong, my form is off, my technique is off, everything is wrong. And little does he know, I have a certain anatomical structure. There are just certain nuances he's not aware of because I am not his client. I do not pay him to help me. I've been in this field for 7 years. I've been training in the gym since I was 12. I'm 36 right now. Like, your girl has had a lot of practice with form and technique and all these things. It's part of how I've helped other people who've paid me. So I feel my blood boil in this moment, as you would typically expect with someone who has a moon in Aries. And I know I'm not going to explode all over this person. I also recognize that I only have so much time and I'm trying to stay focused. So I need to just give short, direct answers and send this dude on his way. He's coming over, trying to adjust my knees and stuff. And I feel myself feeling incredibly uncomfortable. My boundaries are being crossed, my physical boundaries. Obviously, he's been staring at me across the gym. All of my alarm bells are going off within me. And I'm just like, I've got to get out of this conversation as quickly as possible. So he's telling me everything I'm doing wrong, everything I should be doing. And I'm like, okay, I know. Okay. And he finishes off before walking away with a snide, sarcastic remark. And I'm just like, whatever. And I just felt my blood boiling after this. I had gotten to the gym, and prior to that, I had this beautiful breathwork session. I was in this really big energy, and I noticed that this always happens when my energy feels the most expansive, when I'm feeling super centered. And of course, being someone who's learned about energy healing and stuff like that, that is also a red flag for me. Why do you feel compelled to come over here and drop me down or target me when I'm in such a really good space? And that got me asking the question, why do people feel so compelled to give unsolicited advice? I see people do this and I've done it myself. And I know, especially being in the receiving end of that, it is so uncomfortable. It feels very domineering, and there's almost a weird, like, hierarchical thing going on in that moment. When I sat with it last night, the answer finally dropped in. People who have this urge, this like impulse to give advice or help or do any of these things when no one has asked for it have this deep need for recognition. There's this part of them that is just like, I need to feel validated. And the only way I feel that way is when I feel like I'm being useful. And it gives them a sense of self worth. And as I mentioned, a sense of self value. But what we can think of as being generous is actually deeply extractive. And if you know anything about extractive energy, I think a good way to look at it is a lot of people have heard about energy vampires. Same thing. We're trying to give to get. This is like the underlying thing that runs under the people pleaser. This is the shadow of the helper, and it's really not helpful at all. So the whole time you're sitting here thinking that you're trying to be giving, that's how you're framing it in your mind. What's really going on is you're looking for validation. You're looking for a sense of purpose, a sense of self worth. There's something that you are unbeknownst to you, subconsciously running, trying to extract from a situation, and you're calling it being helpful. And what's interesting is when you start to make this connection, when you think about compassion fatigue or people who are in helping positions, helping roles, helping careers, whatever the case may be, burnout is always like a very common felt thing. So many people in helping service based roles deal with burnout at some point. That crash and burn feeling, I've dealt with it so many times. So having this realization drop in has been deeply illuminating. Because what's going on, and as I said, people aren't aware of this until they're aware of it. But when we're in these, putting ourselves in these helper positions, we're like, I want to help people because that makes me feel like a good person, or whatever the case may be for you. We don't realize that what we're actually trying to do is invest our time in other people to get something in return. When what we're looking for is not being reciprocated, when we're not getting that validation, when we are having a hard time helping people, they're resistant to our guidance, they're stubborn to take action, they're just not getting with the program. It feels like a personal attack. And that is where we start dealing with that burnout. That is where we start really questioning our role. Like, do I actually want to help people? When on some level, you may actually hold a helper archetype within you. But when it's shrouded with distortion and it's shrouded with this shadow intent, that is where we start getting into the really sticky territory. And honestly, people are getting burnt out because they're not really giving. And when you're able to sit with that honestly, and allow that to penetrate your heart and penetrate just every cell in your body, and you start asking yourself really important questions, you can start to understand why giving feels so heavy, why you keep getting burnt out, why you keep feeling irritated and you feel this resentment and bitterness coming up every time you run out to help someone who hasn't asked for your help. So I want to ask you, where have you found yourself doing this before? Where have you found yourself in a situation where you're like running to help someone who doesn't really need your help, but you on some level have to be the person to help? You've got to be the helper. If no one does it, and you're the only person who's going to be able to do it. And it puts so much pressure and weight on you to carry that level of belief running in the background. And what it does is it turns our beautiful helpers in the world into cynical, burnt out, pushy, know it all people. We can start to counteract that burnout by kind of pedestalizing ourselves. I know it all. What I have, like kind of gatekeeping the information because we need to be able to uphold that helper position. And as I said, when we look at it on an energetic level, we are seeing a very vampiric energy moving through. It's a very tricky energy, and it's set to repel people. It's set to bring people in who are codependent, and then they turn into this whole situation for you as the helper who all of a sudden wants to get away from them because they're so clung to you. Or you start getting burnt out because those people stay in your field, those codependent people, and it's just this really weird toxic give and take relationship going on. And it's like everyone is getting drained in the process. So the difference between genuine service and genuine helping and being that extractive healer, it's the driving force behind it. And women can come into greater alignment and clear out the distortive patterns behind it. That's when you start making an impact. That's when you become a powerful helper. That is when you are able to hold boundaries and hold high enough standards that the people you're serving, the people you're working with, not only do they want you to help and they're like all ears, but they're the kind of people who have a strong drive towards sovereignty and autonomy. So they're able to come into your world and everyone is able to benefit from the situation. They start finding their own power. They come into their own sense of self authority in the process. So they aren't so codependent on you, and you actually feel the impact of your help. And if you found yourself being the person who's been giving the unsolicited advice, who's been giving the unsolicited help, who's been in the helper role for a long time and is really running into constant cycles of burnout, this isn't to shame you or make you feel guilty or like you're a bad person. We all have a shadow aspect. But once we come into a space where we can start seeing these things more clearly, that's when the game changes. As I said, that's when your impact starts to make a change and you're able to move from a full cup, from a place of wholeness and completion, versus running into situations desperately trying to help and coming out more drained than before. So ask yourself those important questions I posed before. Where have you seen yourself doing this? In what situations have you ran to help someone who honestly wasn't asking for your help? How did that feel? Where did that come from initially? How long? Have you been craving recognition and being taught that the only way you're seen as valuable is if you're helping someone or you're being useful? This is going to put the power back into your hands so that you become the leader you're always meant to be.